as my soul begins to yell. My tongue cleaves to the rooftop of my mouth. Ouch! I'm never getting out. Hell's a place of total torment, prepared for the devil and his demons, where the worm died not. It's pitch dark, burning flames toward you while you still screaming. The devil don't want you to hear me. Baby, hear me out. Baby, hear me out. The devil don't want you to hear me. Baby, hear me out. Baby, hear me out. The devil don't want you to hear me. Don't want you to hear me. The devil don't want you to hear me. Don't want you to hear me. No parole in this place called hell. It's an inferno, prison cell. No TV, no lunch to eat, no weight rooms, no such thing as sleep. Total torment, forever in a day. No time for a party. You're too busy screaming, I'm sorry. Oh my God, why me? Why me? I feel the burning heat. The devil don't want you to hear me. Baby, hear me out. Baby, hear me out. The devil don't want you to hear me. Baby, hear me out. Baby, hear me out. The devil don't want you to hear me. Don't want you to hear me.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Pastor Dan Walker, and this is Sound Travels. And right. It has been quite an interesting week, as always, and we have a great show planned for you today. One of the things that became very apparent in my life, and we thank you, of course, God's Messenger, for our official theme song, The Devil Don't Want You to Hear Me. It has been a very interesting week in the community, in the world, even at New Bethel Baptist Church, where we're doing some things for the Lord. We had a fantastic Black History Month program this past Saturday, and it was very well. The artistry of the children. We had posters and presentations by the children that they had drawn, and it was quite beautiful. Some of the renditions and some of the drawings. It's always fun to watch, to see how kids draw things and present things, and to see exactly what it is that they focus on. How they see the great historical figures. So that was very good. The best part of the afternoon for me, I must confess, was when towards the end there was a discussion about race relations, and the audience, the people who were in attendance, of course, it was a mixed crowd. So they got a chance to hear me, I got a chance to hear them, and we all had a chance to hear each other. And I thought that was probably the best part of the afternoon. We intend, and so much so that hopefully in the coming days we'll be able to do an actual forum on race relations in the community, where people from all walks will come and sit down and just talk to each other. That was the absolute best part about it, was we were just talking to each other. And some things that were said had never been heard before. And I find that curious, just as some things that were said needed to be said. So, what Sound Travels, I'm a sound engineer. More importantly, I'm a born-again believer in Jesus Christ, who's probably the most important part. But all through my life, at the age of 11, when I fixed my very first piece of electronic equipment, it was a phonograph, a turntable. For those of you who may be slightly advanced in years, you know what I'm talking about. But for the people out there who may not have heard of such a thing, there used to be some things called records. And those records would sit on a platter, and that platter would turn around. It would spin, and something was placed on it called a needle. and the needle would track the record, which is what was played on the record player. Now, I realize that some people don't even have a clue of what I just said, but that was the means of music back in the old days. And just as a piece of history of I always found interesting, a record is the only form of recorded media that I know of that does not need electrical amplification. You can have voice, music, and actually without any type of electricity, you can play that back, because a record was grooves cut in first metal, wax, then vinyl, and the grooves were the actual sound of the music that was being recorded onto it. So all you had to do was stick a needle into that groove. The needle would vibrate in response to that groove, and you can hook that needle to a big horn, and you could hear sound. Hence, that was the very first record player, which is what's called a Victrola. And there was no electricity that ran it. It was a mechanical turntable. You turn it with a crank, and that would get the platter turning, and you put the needle on it. And the needle was just a piece of metal that tracked in the groove, was connected to a series of a horn, like you would, if you imagine, like we used to make the bull horns, hello, that type of thing. It was connected to that, and that's how the sound came out. Well, I know I got kind of wandered down the little rabbit trail there of what a record is. That was the first piece of equipment I repaired when I was 11 years old. It wasn't playing. I was playing it and I couldn't hear it, so I raised the needle up, and it was a wire broken off of the needle. Back then it was just a mono, which means there was only one sound as opposed to two sounds. So the cartridge only had two wires coming off of it. All current record players that you see will have four wires coming off of them for left and right. So I got out my father's soldering gun. It was a Weller soldering gun with a big Bakelite case. It's probably the heaviest thing I'd ever grabbed at 11 years old. And I began to heat it up, and I began to solder, and I soldered the wire back onto the cartridge, and I played the record, and it made sound. So when my father pulled back in, of course, his shop was in the basement, so I could see the cars coming. You know, you look up, you see the car coming in. Not to mention, I could hear every car that approached the street. I knew where the car was going. I knew. By the time I was 11 years old, actually by the time I was 8 years old, I'd learned the sound of every car that came down our street on a regular basis. So when his car hit the street, I knew it was him coming back. But I didn't stop playing the record. So when he came in, he said to me, "Well, you know that you disobeyed me." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You should get a beating because you disobeyed me." And I went, "Yes, sir." But he said, "You fixed it, so let's go get the money. Let's go collect for it." So I took it back, and I returned it to its owner, who turned out to be a sister I didn't know I had. And I was told to charge her $5, so I charged her $5 to repair her record player. So that was the first piece. And then from that point on, he began to take me under his wing and show me how to actually repair things properly. I said that to say this. When you spend your life as a technician, or a problem solver, you spend your life solving problems. And what I have frequently told people who know me and who have worked with me, and even people who have hired me, that once you introduce me to the situation, I'm going to find the problem. Anytime I'm introduced into any situation, I will find the problem, even if the problem is me. So I have no illusions as to where problems can be found. So when you spend your life problem solving to the point of trying to in fact solve the problem, it becomes frustrating when you see a lot of problems that are not getting solved. Just recently, there was a tragic shooting in a school, and everybody has chosen the side at which they want to be. And my question is, do you want to solve the problem? Do you want to save the children, or do you want to save an ideology? Because whenever these things happen, the first thing seems to immediately go to the ideology and not to what it would take to solve the problem. A practical example, you're driving your car. We all drive cars. On the car somewhere now, we pray, we trust, there's a gas gauge. The gas gauge starts at F and goes to E. When it goes to E, now these new cars have a light that comes on that'll tell you that you're low on fuel. Mine comes on at 50 miles. When I have 50 miles left in my tank, either in the city or on the highway, the light will come on and say you have 50 miles left. And then it'll begin to count down to 0. Now, what I have learned through trial and error, every car is different. Some cars come on at 35. I've seen one car that came on at 25. When you're at 0, you're not ever really out of gas. There's usually enough gas left in the tank to get another 5 or 6 miles if you're in the city, and another 10 miles if you're on the highway. Meaning that there's usually about a half of gallon, if not a gallon, of fuel in the tank, even when the needle reads 0. Now, almost every guy out there knows this about his vehicle because we're always testing it. Meanwhile, I will make a very sexist statement. Most women say, I never heard of that. Once it goes to 0, I fill it up. And a lot of people fill it up when it gets to a quarter tank. My father was always of the opinion that you never let the tank get below half full. So you try to keep it at least between a quarter and a half full at all times. The whole point of what I'm saying is that when the gas gauge goes to a certain level, you realize that there is a problem. And that problem has a solution. It doesn't have a philosophy. It doesn't have a concept. There is a bona fide solution. When you are out of gas, you must put gas in the car. Otherwise, your car doesn't go anywhere. When you call me to look at your church and to listen to your sound system and to decide what I feel and what I hear is wrong with it, there is a bona fide series of things that need to be done to resolve the issue. It's not a philosophy. It's not, well, the church has been here for 50 billion years. We don't want to have any speakers that you can see. Okay, well, that's a preference. And then you look at the church, and the church is an historical building, and they won't let you cut anything into the wall. Well, there's a problem here, because the philosophy says we can't let the people see the speakers, but the law says you can't hide the speakers in the wall because you can't cut this historical building. So what I'm trying to say is that there are times when philosophies and practical application run headlong into each other. So what do you do at that point? What is your goal? Is your goal to have sound in your church, or is your goal to maintain the philosophy of the building? The same thing with the shooting of in the schools. I've listened to this 6 Ways to Sunday, and I will say that the philosophy that is pointing to the guns as the problem. Many times there's a gun used, the gun is the problem. But we recently had a stabbing where somebody came in and stabbed somebody in the library. But I haven't heard a big outcry trying to outlaw all the knives. Why? Because that narrative doesn't fit the philosophy. And we have to be very careful when, if you call me to your church to solve the problem with your church, and all I hear from you is the philosophy of your church, that's an issue. Because you asked me to solve a problem, which is a physical quantifiable issue. I was over at Way of the Cross a week ago, and their main sound system, all I could hear was one high in the whole church. The amplifier, I tested everything. It turned out that their two speakers were blown except for one high driver on one side. Now, this is not a point for a philosophy. This is not a point for an ideology. This is not a point for what we always did, how we're going to approach this. You have to replace those speakers, you have to repair those speakers, or you have to live with the fact that all you're going to hear is the high driver of one side. So naturally, of course, I said, well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your speakers are blown, your amplifier is underpowered, and that's what's blowing them. The way to solve this is to replace these speakers, and not just the speakers, but replace the amplifier so that this doesn't happen again in 6 months. Because they have several services, I want to say at least 3 to 4 services every Sunday with various different styles of preaching. So they need to be prepared for this. Now, luckily, the people there, Bishop Kelly and Pastor Rowe, are astute enough to understand that this is not a time for philosophy. This is a time to solve a problem. So I put in two speakers and another amplifier, and I stopped by on Sunday to give a listen to what it sounded like, and they're loving it. It's all working fine. Now, this is simple problem-solving logic. What is it doing? What's it supposed to do? And what does it take to make it do what you want it to do? If our goal is to protect the children, then we need to employ the techniques that will do that. If those techniques fly in the face of a philosophy, the philosophy needs to go away. I almost said the philosophy be damned, but I don't want to be said I'm swearing on the radio, so I won't say that. The first and foremost thing is to protect the children, period. Now, how do we do that? Well, that is where the interesting argument always seems to rise. But it's not an interesting argument. If your car is out of gas, there is no philosophy that's going to change that. You must put gas in your car. The speakers were blown. There's no philosophy that's going to magically make those speakers work again. There is an action that will make them work, and that action is the repair of those speakers. But a philosophy doesn't fix that. A mindset doesn't fix that. An action fixes that. In this case, the action was to replace the speakers, replace the amplifier, tune it, and then show them how this is what it's supposed to sound like. We need to do what will fix the problem. This is a call-in show. Feel free to call in. The numbers are 617-282-0685, 617-282-7794, and 617-265-2679. Feel free to call in if you have an idea, if you want to challenge me on what I just said. Feel free to call in and talk to me about it, because as I said, I'm a technician. My job is to solve problems. My job is not to get involved in the philosophy until the problem is fixed. I'll never forget, I was watching a TV show, I think it actually happened to be MASH, and one of the surgeons was having a problem with a particular patient, and he was shuffled off the table to let a more skilled surgeon get in there and solve the problem. And the commander said, "Wounded eagles come later. First, solve the problem." And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. Wounded philosophies need to come later. We need to solve the problem. We need to protect our children, and we need to take the steps that will ensure that when they go to school, they are protected. And if you think about it, you can't go into a courthouse today carrying a cell phone. You can't go into the courthouse. I've been carrying a Leatherman utility knife for the last 20 some odd years. Whenever you see me, as a matter of fact, even longer than that, because I was at a wedding in a full tuxedo with a cummerbund and everything, and the pastor sent word to find Dan. And the person said, "Excuse me, are you Dan?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Pastor said send him a screwdriver. He needs a screwdriver." And I said, "Okay." And he looked at me, it's like, "I told him that you were in your tuxedo." He said, "Go find Dan." Because underneath my cummerbund, I had my Leatherman tucked had the screwdriver. I pulled it out, I handed it to him, and he said, "Wow, he knew you would have that." Because when you're solving problems, you want to have what you need to solve the problem. Not a philosophy, not a concept, not an ideology, but a screwdriver. What tool is necessary to solve the problem? While we think about that, let's listen to Pastor Clarence Thompson and the New Spirits. Because he has a philosophy too, but this one actually is correct.
Yeah, yeah. You can move a little bit if you wanna. It's all right. I've been running, trying to make 100. 99 I had want to. Whoa, I've been singing, yeah,
trying to make 100.
99 and I had, I've been praying, yes I have,
trying to make 100.
99 and I had, listen, Father, I stretch my hand to thee, no other help do I know. Shadow of thine, withdraw thyself from me. Tell me where. Yeah, yeah. You can move a little bit if you wanna. It's all right. I've been running, trying to make 100. 99 I had want to. Whoa, I've been singing, yeah,
trying to make 100.
99 and I had, I've been praying, yes I have,
trying to make 100.
99 and I had, listen, Father, I stretch my hand to thee, no other help do I know. Shadow of thine, withdraw thyself from me. Tell me where could I go? I've been moaning in the midnight hour.
Trying to make 100.
99 and I have, I've been singing,
Pastor Clarence Thomas and the New Spirit, Thompson and the New Spirits. 99.5 just won't do. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Pastor Dan. How are you this morning?
I'm happy now that I hear your smiling voice. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Sound Travel is proud to present to some and introduce to others Mother Ann Parrish with Mom's Corner.
Well, good morning, everyone. You know, a little while ago, a beautiful gospel artist, this Tamala Man, came out with a song. And the chorus says, "Close your eyes, there's no more need to fight, and watch God provide." And I began to think about that. Watch God provide. And then I thought, Lord, you have provided so many things that I didn't even know I needed. You know, in your word, you say that you would give us the desires of our heart. So not only do you provide, you made a statement, a declaration, a promise, a commitment, that not only will you provide the things that we need, we'll say on a daily basis, but there are things in our heart that we desire also. And you love us so much that you go a step beyond what is regular to us. And you provide the desires of our heart. And you know, that's what God does. He looks on the inside and he sees your needs more than you can express, more than you can state, even sometimes more than you can think. And he provides those and then some. We serve and then some God. Then some more of his love, his compassion, his forgiveness, his joy. He provides more than, not just material things, but more things to make the inner man better for the outer man. Because when the inner man is good, the outer man is excellent.
Wow.
So I was listening to that and I thought, just watch God provide. Because, you know, we look and we say, oh, I got a new home, I'm getting a new car, I got a new promotion. But God said, no, I'll give you more than that. I'm going to give you my peace while you're going through trials. I'm going to give you my love when the world has taken theirs away. I'm going to give you my compassion when you mess up. I'm going to restore you to me. I've already done that for you. So these things are more important than material because now God is giving us the realness of him. And we always must remember that God is real and that he's not the man upstairs. He's not the good old boy. He's not our good friend. But he's a God who created everything, us included. And because he did, he takes care of his creation. And we are created in the likeness of him. So he takes care of us because we belong to him. So as the song says, when you close your eyes tonight, no more need to fight. You don't need to worry. You don't need to fret. Just watch God provide.
Wow. Amen. That is right on time. That is actually that is so topical and so current right now. It's really hitting me right where I live because I'm just in that season right now where I need to see God provide. So it means I need to spend more time praying and I need to spend more time fasting. I need to spend more time doing my part so that God can do his part. Oh, my goodness.
So true.
Thank you. This is just wonderful. Wow. I got goosebumps. That's amazing. How are you doing, Mommy?
I'm doing awesome because I'm watching God provide so much peace inside of me with all the situations I've gone through. I'm not worried about anything because I truly believe all that I need, everything that I need, God will provide. So I can go to sleep at night now. It hasn't been easy, but I'm learning, and I love the learning. I have not learned, but I'm learning to watch God provide for my family, for a church family, for my friends, for my neighbors. Watch God provide. He didn't ask me to do anything. Don't step in nowhere. Don't try to make no decisions. Just watch God provide. And then give him the praise as I see the blessings flowing, overturning, just, shake down, press together, and overflowing. He said, I will provide to your bosom.
Amen. Wow. Okay. Yeah, when I spoke to you yesterday, you said God's got it, and you were right. My goodness, did he give you a full glass today? How you doing, Pastor Dwayne Wheeler? Give me a shout out there. I'm seeing that you were watching, and Pastor and Scott, my brother Scott, how you doing? He says he's 40 and he remembers records. And Louise, hi, Louise, Tony. It's good to see that you're watching, and thank you. You are in fact also blessed and highly favored. My brother Alex Mason, ex-pastor from years ago, who is out on the West Coast now. How you doing there, man? It's good to see that you're watching. And hi, Shannon. It's good to see that you're watching on Facebook. We're trying a different setup this morning. We have the Facebook Live running through the station, so you're actually getting good, clean sound, and you're getting good, a good picture image. Well, as best as it can be with me in it. So, okay, Mom, it's so nice to hear from you, and wow, what a teaching. I feel like we should be passing the hat right about now. So, God provides. Love you, and thanks for calling in, and we'll see you next week on Mom's Corner.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. So there you have it. So if you had any question about it, I think it's all been answered. So before the break, before the song, and before my mother called, I had put forth the challenge that are we willing to in fact solve a problem? When I'm working on a sound system, we were getting set up for an event that has been that was canceled, and in the process of solving that problem, the first thing to do when you go to do a live event, you should go and look at the venue, talk to the people who run the venue, scout out how much power is in the venue, how many wall sockets, are they all on the same circuit? I remember, I'll never forget the one church that had 4 wall sockets the length of one side of the building of the sanctuary, and they were all on the same 15 amp circuit. So the sound engineer plugged in the amplifiers to one, the sound board was plugged into another, which by itself might have worked, and then the lighting guy came in and he plugged into a third one. And the first time during the sound checks, of course, everything was fine because the lights weren't on. And then when the show came up, he turned the lights on, and the first note, the first time the guitar player hit the chord, the breaker popped, and we're dead. And everything was dead because it determined that all of those were on one circuit. So that never happens again because now we always check to see how many individual circuits that we have. So we go look at the room, and we decided that this would be the best place to set the mics up, and this would be the layout. Well, it's very important. And then once you know the layout, you know where the speakers have to be placed. And if it's a band, are they going to be placed in front of the band, which is always the best way to put them. You have less chance of feedback if they're going to be in front of the main microphones. But if it's a forum, where there's not going to be music. As long as your engineer knows what he's doing, you can put the speakers behind the microphones off to one side in the corners where they were going to be placed. So what I'm saying is that a situation was coming up, a problem was going to happen. You have to put sound in this room, so you prepare for that. So going back to this school tragedy at this school, you know you're going to have children going into a location, and then you know, or you should know, that can be a breeding ground for people who want to do stupid and evil things. So you should be prepared at that point in time to protect those children the best way possible. But here's the issue, I guess, our philosophy. We don't like guns. Guns are bad. But guns are not the problem. The problem is bigger than any one gun, because the most tragic school tragedy that we know was not where 35 children were lost and 35 people were killed in a school, wasn't even done by a gun or an assault rifle. We didn't even know what an assault rifle was. It was a mad person who set off a bomb in the school in 1920. In the 1920s, he set off a bomb in the school and leveled the school, killing everybody in it. So do we need a law to outlaw bombs? Well, we already have such a law. Good morning, Jason. Nice to see you watching. We already have such a law. Do we need a law to outlaw assault weapons? There's already a law on the books in Florida that outlaw and ban assault weapons. Do we need a law that say that people that have mental issues shouldn't have access to firearms? Yes, we do need a law. Oh, wait a minute. There is already a law that was in place. In other words, there were already systems in place that should have protected these kids. And at every turn, the systems failed. At every turn. The parents didn't realize or didn't pay attention. I know that he lost his mother tragically. I'm not sure that, but somebody somewhere should have recognized this kid as a monster. Well, you can't call him a monster. Yes, I can, because he was or is a monster. And whenever you have, and we have to be very careful that when our kids are growing up, we're watching them, we're loving them, we're paying enough attention to them so that we can see if we're raising monsters. Children don't come out of the womb as thugs. They don't come out of the womb as killers, as murderers, as rapists, as embezzlers. This stuff doesn't happen. This is all learned behavior. Now notice I didn't talk about sexual preference. I didn't talk about gender identity or any of that stuff. I'm talking about these homicidal. I'm talking about things that have to do with pretty simple signs. Apparently, I was under the impression that there were about 35 calls to the local establishment. Turns out now that there were over 50 different complaints for this child, that he was mutilating he was torturing local animals, that he was threatening, he had beat up his mother. There were so many signs that something should have been done, and nothing ever was. And that is a problem. When all of your systems are in place and nobody follows up on the systems and nobody takes responsibility and nothing happens, then when these tragedies happen, everybody wrings their hands and says, oh, what do we do? Well, what you do is what you should have done in the first place. You're driving your car, the gas needle is going over, it starts off at full, it goes to half, then it goes to a quarter, and then it's empty. And at some point you have to realize that when it's empty, the car is going to stop. Whether it stops exactly at empty, I don't think I've ever had a car that did that. I did have one car that was pretty close, but I don't think I've ever had a car that stopped exactly when the needle got to empty. So in this situation, in this boy's life, his needle had gone to empty, and nobody took any notice of it until he did what he did. But how do we change that? How do we stop that? Well, we stop that by recognizing that there's a problem. And once you know there's a problem, you need to find the solution. And the solution is not going... You can say that guns are bad and we should ban all guns. Outlaw, and what's the saying? When guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Well, that's true, because the outlaws aren't following the laws now. Marijuana has been illegal until recently, but surprise, surprise, it's been very prevalent. It's an undercurrent of society. It's always around. Everybody knows where to find it. Here's an illegal substance that might as well have been legal because it's just as prevalent. So the law isn't the issue. The issue is the individual recognizing the fact. I don't smoke marijuana. I confess, I've smoked it 3 times in my life and decided that, no, this is not for me. I don't understand it. The first time I was very paranoid. The second time it was not much better. I just finally decided that, no, I'm not going to be a person that smokes weed because I don't get it. Okay, that was my decision, but I had to make that decision, and once I made that decision, I don't care how many laws you pass legalizing, it isn't going to affect me, because I don't do it. And do I tell other people not to do it? Yeah. I tell other people not to do things that I think are bad for them, but it's ultimately their choice. We have got to start at some point respecting and understanding and celebrating the individual. Because the individual is what makes the difference. All of those laws, all of those systems, all of those things that were supposed to stop this individual failed. And this individual was able to carry out the mission he had actually said he was going to do. How do you blame a gun for that? This coming month, the month of March, at New Bethel Baptist Church, we're having several events. There's going to be a one-day revival on March the 11th, Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock in Framingham at the New Bethel Baptist Church. Our special guest speaker is going to be none other than Bishop Anthony E. Hamby from Moncks Corner, South Carolina. And you have got to come out. This is going to be a good old, I know it's a Baptist church, but it's going to become Pentecostal real quick for that evening. We're going to have a good old-fashioned Pentecostal revival, and you're going to enjoy. We have musical talent that's lined up. I know Pastor James Funches has said that he will come out and bring his troupe, and they're going to be doing some praise and worship for us. And many other surprise guest artists would be there as well. I'm asking everybody to get there as promptly, as close as possible to 4 o'clock so we can begin on time, which is 4 o'clock. And then on the 17th, not to be outdone, we're going to have 2 things. We're going to have a clothing giveaway, current clothes. If you need clothing for the summertime, these are going to be not bargain basement handoffs. They're going to be actual clothes, some of them with the price tag still on them, all current styles and the whole bit, starting at noon at the New Bethel Baptist Church in Framingham, Mass. There'll be a clothing giveaway, kind of following in the footsteps of my mother, who runs a clothing pantry at her church at St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church in Akron, Ohio, where Pastor Reverend Clifford Norwood is the pastor, who is a good friend and confidant. He's one of those pastors that you can call, and he doesn't. He helps you with your problem, and if there's an issue, he will tell you what the issue is, even if the issue is you. Say, man, you need to change your attitude about that, or you need to understand this and that whole bit. So he's a good person to be around. So I've spent time with him, and I talk to him on a regular basis. So he will. So that's what's going on at our church, and then our special guest group for the concert on that day is we're having none other than Lauren Sweetlam was one of the presenters, and she'll be ministering in her inevitable way. And then the special guest headlining group is...
For a very long time, couldn't get no help, no peace of mind.
The Sons of the Bullock Brothers.
Came a man, asked me a question. Do you wanna be whole? Do you wanna be whole? Help me, brother. Lying at the pool for a very long time. Couldn't get no help, no peace of mind. Then came a man, asked me a question. Do you want to be whole? Do you want to be? Do you want to be whole? Jesus asked the man, do you want to be whole? Do you want to be whole? Do you want God to shine? Do you want God to shine a light from heaven on your soul? Do you want to be saved? Tell me, do you want to be saved? Do you want to be? Tell me, do you want to be free? Do you want to be whole? Do you want to be whole? You've been living in darkness. Living in darkness, can't see no light. Tossing and turning, tossing and turning, can't sleep at night. You have rejected. You have rejected what's most important. Do you want to be whole? Yeah. Do you want to be whole? You've been living in darkness. Living in darkness. Can't see no light. Tossing and turning. Tossing and turning. Can't sleep at night. Can't sleep at night. You have rejected. You have rejected what's most important. What's most important. Do you want to be? Tell me, do you want to be? Do you want to be? Jesus wants to know. Do you want to be whole? Do you want to be whole? Do you want God to shine a light from heaven on your soul? Do you want to be saved? Do you want to be free? Tell me, do you want to be free? Oh, yeah. Listen, you want to be whole. Your life's all broken. Life's all broken and torn apart. Feeling condemnation. Feeling condemnation in your heart. In your heart. This is the question. This is the question you've got to answer. That you must answer. Yeah. Do you want to be? Tell me, do you want to be? Do you want to be? Do you want to be made whole? Do you want to be whole? Yeah. Do you want God to shine a light from heaven on your soul? Do you want to be saved? Tell me, do you want to be saved? Tell me, do you want to be free? Oh yeah. Do you want to be? Do you want to be made whole? Do you want to be whole? Do you want God to shine a light from heaven on your soul? Do you want to be saved? Tell me, do you want to be saved? Do you want to be? Tell me, do you want to be free? Do you want to be? Tell me, do you want to be? Do you want to be whole? Yeah. Do you want to be whole? Do you want God to shine a light from heaven on your soul? Do you want to be saved? Do you want to be? Tell me, do you want to be? Do you want to be whole? Do you want to be saved? Do you want to be saved? Do you want to be?
The Sons of the Bullock Brothers will be in attendance at New Bethel Baptist Church on March 17, starting at 4 p.m. That is Do You Want to Be Whole? That's probably one of my favorite songs in the gospel community because that is the key. Do you want to be whole? When you call me to resolve a problem, you're calling me because you have something that's not whole, it's not complete, it's not working the way it's supposed to work. And whether it's a sound system, whether it's an ABS light on a Ford Escape that I recently had to solve by changing the ABS sensor, which took almost 2 hours to get the stuck bolt out. There's a problem, and the problem has to be fixed. Do you want to be whole? Do we want our community to be whole? Do we want our church to be whole? Do we want the people in our lives to be whole? You got to start by identifying what is wrong, what doesn't work, and then fix it. It doesn't do any good when you're sitting there beside the road with your car's out of gas, because all you would have had to do at some point in time was to look down and see that your gas gauge was on empty. I keep going back to that one because it's an easy one to understand. We've all run out of gas. And if you don't have AAA, you got a problem. Luckily, I have AAA, so I don't have a problem. But you still got to wait for them to show up to bring the gas to you. So that's a problem. So how do you make your sound systems whole? You find the problems, you fix the problems, you train people how to run them, and then you move on. How do you make your school safe? You find the problems, you fix the problems, you protect the children, and then you move on. So we just invite you to come right now to the throne of grace with us. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for allowing us to be here. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. We thank you for Boston Praise Radio and Pastor Bruce Wall. We thank you for all those people who have been listening and who will listen diligently and faithfully. We thank you for my mother and Mom's Corner, who's able to share her wisdom and to share what the Lord has placed on her heart from a mom's point of view, from a mother's point of view. Lord, we just thank you for all of those artists, the gospel artists. We thank you for God's messenger. We thank you for the Sons of the Bullock Brothers, for Lauren Sweet Lamb, for Pastor James Funches, for, oh my goodness, I don't want to start, if I start naming, I forget some, but Pastor Ruffin, Pastor Dave, the Broken Chains Biker Church, Pastor Deb and Pastor Tom. Lord, we thank you for all of the churches in the Framingham area that are doing your will for Greater Framingham Friendship. Pastor Lloyd. We thank you for everybody out there who is trying to walk in your walk and to live a life your way. And we ask that now you protect us and you keep us and you help us to be whole. Show us the path that we may walk so that we can walk it and become whole people in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Your mic off. Should be froze.
The old folk didn't even try to explain it. They would just say
listening to WBPG LP.